Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Soy Advisor. I'm Kelsey in West Central Illinois, where I know the big topic of the day is the storms that blew through earlier this week, which we'll talk about. And I think a lot of people are having internet issues, so apologies if anything's delayed or things don't go right, but we'll work through it anyways. That's the beauty of technology. So let's just get right to it. Where I'm at in Knox County, the northern eastern side of me got the worst of it. Officially declaring it which I said earlier, I didn't even know what that word until probably like 2 years ago. And now I'm hearing it at least once a year. And that's not a good thing, right? So looking at the National Weather Service, they said the system produced at least 3 tornadoes. I'm hearing more. Those speeds were equivalent to a Cat 2 hurricane, which you don't like hearing either. A lot of people without power, a lot of rainfall where I'm at. I think we just got below an inch. I was expecting more. I know areas down in Fulton County, 6 inches. Rain was just coming out of the gauges, and it was ridiculous. So let's go ahead, start. Tell me, did you get weather in your area? Did you not? And we'll go from there. Karen, you want to get started first down in McLean County?
I'm actually in Woodford.
Oh,
Sunday night I had an inch, and then Monday night I had about 4 cents. So there really wasn't a lot going on here. We did have a tornado that passed just west of here through Morton, and then kind of headed towards Danvers and Carlock. We were just out of that area. I will tell you that the corn rootworms in the second and third year corn are definitely evident in eastern Iowa after that came through. There were some issues prior season here, but a lot more showed up yesterday. I had one client in Northwest Illinois who lost 2 grain legs in a bin. I had another client in Genoa that had over the 3-day period 9 inches, and he had a lot of flat corn too. It just kind of depended on where you were. I talked to my parents that are about an hour from me, and they thought Sunday night was a lot worse than Monday night. So as far as wind and that, damage-wise, nothing really here, but I know you get onto McLean, and there's trees everywhere. They did finally open Interstate 55 this morning, so that's a good sign, but that kind of got worse once it got that far east, in the northern part of Illinois. South of 80, I think it got a little bit better, but it depended on where you were. So mostly just talking with farmers, things look okay. Would look a lot better if we were 3 weeks ago and not today. So everything is a little bit behind. All of this is going to set up the possibility for a fair amount of disease. So it's definitely a great time to be scouting. There's a lot of corn here that hasn't even tasseled yet. So I've heard a lot this week from my growers about where you should use a helicopter or an airplane. For as tall as the corn is this year, I think a lot of it could be done by a grain. So because I'm only 5'8", and there's a lot of corn that's just a few inches taller than me. So I think we have more options this year to get on if we do have quite the outbreak. So a lot of questions on weed control that failed. There is a great video by Dr. Rodrigo out of Wisconsin showing some different mixtures in traded beans, and that's well worth watching to see what worked well and what didn't. And just, a lot of herbicides are off-label, but also the weeds are so tall that the weeds are just going to fit a lot of applications. So you're going to have to look at some measures if you need to clean up some fields to make sure that you can really get them cleaned up.
do you think, Karen, growers should just throw up their hands when it comes to weeds? Because looking at these prices for commodities right now, they might just say, it's a battle this year. Or do you advocate for continuing to try to control them?
Well, it kind of depends on your situation. A lot of landlords, particularly in Illinois, do not like to see weeds in their field. So that has to come into play, at least here. That's not necessarily as much of a big deal in other places. I would try to clean up the headlands at least where it's worse, but spraying chemicals on 2.5-foot tall water hemp is not going to do it. You're going to either have to get them pulled or try to chop them out or look at possibly one of the weed zappers, because I know some of them are above the crop canopy. But, a lot of that stuff we really don't want to see go to seed because it's just going to be that much worse next year. So I do what you can, but at least it's cooler this week. So if you did have to go dig some stuff out, it wouldn't be bad. But yeah, it's not going to be fun.
That's what I was just about to say. I'm like, it's a cooler week. Maybe time to get after it out in the fields. Thanks, Karen. Craig, heading over to you in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, thanks. You can hear me. A lot of them, same messaging that Karen mentioned. We're getting some reports from wind damage. So we've got, I sit here in Central Illinois in Monticello, right here close to the White Heath Hub in our breeding station. They've got one field that we'll probably visit and take some notes on some wind damage for lodging and maybe green snap. I haven't heard a lot of green snap, but I also haven't been in the fields myself. So there's one there. I know our Monmouth group has also said they've got a couple fields to go assess. So which is north and west. It's actually straight north of Beckett. So I think pretty close to where Karen was talking about. We'll be visiting that. And then I have not heard from our water. That's really what we're doing now. Breeding organization. I would also say I spent a few days, last couple of days in our corn nursery, and disease is starting to show up. Now that's kind of a not exactly what you want to run off of, but it is a precursor to what you might see because some of those are a little more susceptible than the hybrid. So there is some rust showing up. I think I saw tar spot, but I'm not going to say that's what it was. And it's also an irrigated piece of ground, so that would lend itself to tar spot. Rain, most are in good situations. I think most, and then there's a lot of people that have got way too much. So been seeing some airplanes fly around, so fungicide is going on. But yeah, I would also say what Karen said, corn does seem a little shorter this year than it did last year. So that drier June that we went through, I think, has shortened it up a little bit. So yeah, that's my report for today.
Thanks, Craig. I keep hearing it's one extreme or the other. I'm like, oh, when are we not going to have one extreme or the other? That's for sure. But never one season's the same. Drew, let's head up to your neck of the woods, around north of I-80.
Yeah, so really it's kind of variable on where we had wind damage and where we didn't. So even that talking to some of my dealers around Freeport area, they had very heavy winds, but a lot of the crop was able to withstand it or just lean just a little bit. You go over maybe that north of Sterling, Dixon, for that area here earlier in the week, and growth staging some beans. And they're wet, but really very, very little wind damage. So the wind blew hard, but luckily a lot of the hybrids had their brace put down, and they're just the really heavy damage is pretty localized. But then you get down into near like Winona, El Paso, we've got a pre-commercial trial and a very, very heavy green snap and things like that. So pretty variable what we're seeing. A lot of questions around fungicide app, a lot of beans that were planted in that 420 to 430 time frame are getting into that R3 where we like having that fungicide application made. Corn rootworm trapping, we've kind of pulled our first few rounds of traps, and we're sitting anywhere. And these are targeted fields where we had some damage early on from feeding. We're looking at 40 to 50 beetles per trap on average, which is high. It's actually a little bit lower than I thought we would have based on the feeding levels that we saw in the field. But we'll continue to monitor and see kind of how that changes and evolve. We are seeing sow clippings, things like that at that level of infestation. One note I would make is around the fungicide application on corn. I do have a lot of growers that are wanting to go to more of a scout and spray type of a situation, which I don't argue with, looking at commodity prices and such. The only thing that I would remind is we have to scout in that situation. So saying that we're going to scout and spray and then going and looking at the field one time and then walking away from it is not scouting. So we need to monitor it. This is going to change or could change very rapidly with the weather we've had.
Thanks, Drew. Reminders there. Let's head down to Southern Illinois, where Kelly is, where the faucet just won't turn off.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was, yeah, the Weather Service just totally blew that one. We weren't really supposed to get rain till Wednesday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, I guess, coming out of the south. And actually, part of the area did get that second rain, but anywhere from 8-9 inches to a few tenths across the region. Perry, Jackson, Washington, Jefferson, Clinton, Monroe counties. I had customers sending me pictures of their rain gauges showing 13 inches per hour rain rate. The dam, the city reservoir dam at Nashville, it breached both levees. A lot of the evacuations. So that water, a lot of flash flooding, lots of crops underwater, lots of water running fast across fields that way in that area. Then yesterday, you could tell where the water was at as it moved towards the Mississippi south, because local EMAs were closing roads along the Big Muddy and the Little Muddy and the other river. So we were fortunate, very, very fortunate. We got Tuesday 1.1 inches of rain, and it took almost 12 hours to get it. So we were on the opposite side, if you want to say that, of the bad stuff. Now you go through a zone here where there wasn't much rain, and then, like I said, what came in Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, over towards Evansville, Paducah, down that way. Again, they saw 3 to 5 inches of rain out of that went through there. So that area over there, St. Louis, we'll just say west of 57, Interstate 57, 70 that way, has seen a tremendous amount of rain in the last 3 weeks. I talked to 2 or 3 seed dealers yesterday that finally we're going to close the books on 24 because they were still getting replant beans in from the previous 2 rains, and this will end it. They just said that the guys called and said we're done. So I think planting now is officially over in Southern Illinois. Other than that, airplanes flying on the early corn. I'm getting reports of pollination issues in some of the April planted corn. I've seen some really nasty looking ears. I think the first indication was the sweet corn that started coming out. Some of the early sweet corn did not pollinate good, and now we're seeing some of the early corn, the April planted corn, missed the nick. So we're seeing a lot of zipper ear, which is kind of funny. I didn't think we were that hot when it was pollinating, but zipper ear, we're seeing a lot of just missed pollination, a lot of ratty looking ears. So just, here we are, 2024, the year that keeps giving.
I was going to say put the nail in the coffin, it sounds like, for a lot of growers down there, that's for sure. Thanks, Kelly. Eric, anything to add that you've been seeing out in the fields?
Yeah, so it's very apparent that I guess in East Central Illinois, we're very fortunate. We've missed a lot of the weather that everybody else on the call seems to be talking about. We did range, somewhere probably from an inch to a half an inch we got out of the derecho producing storm that came through the area. No down corn or anything to speak of, maybe just a few tree limbs here and there. But really, we escaped the derecho event unscathed here in East Central Illinois. The big topic that I'm kind of starting to deal with is corn leaf aphids. It seems like corn leaf aphids for us, populations have really exploded here within the last 4 to 5 days in a lot of fields, and it does seem to be very hybrid specific. Seems like it likes other hybrids and we're also noticing that those hybrids, maybe have a little bit better plant health, maybe just some more leafy, kind of more showy type hybrids. It seems like the corn leaf aphids kind of seem to have some preferential feeding. You can almost find it to the row, like say if a grower has got a split planter, or 2 hybrids, you're seeing that difference clear across the field. And just remind growers that if we are trying to control corn leaf aphids, a basic pyrethroid is likely not going to do a very good job. If you've ever tried to control white flies, anybody's tried to control white flies knows that those are very difficult to control. They can overcome a lot of insecticide treatments. And so corn leaf aphids are kind of similar in control measures. We need to up our game, look at specific insecticides recommendations. If you go out and search Iowa State or even UNL, got some great recommendations out there as far as what specific groups or insecticides might work best to control corn leaf aphids. But that kind of seems to be kind of the topic around what fungicide applications are going on strong in our area. A lot of the corn that was planted 14th or maybe a little bit early, I would say most of that corn's probably has had a fungicide, or those fungicide treatments, if they're going to go on, have probably gone on now. Now we're starting to look at some of that later planted corn in May, around the 1st or 2nd week of May. That crop for us in this part of the area definitely looks like it's probably going to be our better corn this year, because we continue to think about all the stress events that early planted corn for our area in. And I always use the analogy that corn is like an elephant; it never forgets. If you look hard enough in a corn plant, you will find that stress event and when exactly it occurred in its life cycle. So, and I can see that in our crop, just in how uneven stuff tasseled for that early corn was very apparent. But it seems like that May corn may be our best corn. And I was talking with one grower 2 days ago, and he thinks this may be his best crop he's ever had. And he told me he's 66, and so he's got a few notches on his belts of seasons. And so, I guess from everybody else, and just reflecting back on the season, I guess we feel pretty fortunate here in East Central Illinois, I guess, where we're at. But it is going to be very dependent on planting date this year of I think of how your crop is going to fare.
Yeah, it seems like that conversation just keeps coming up on planting day, and then when harvest rolls around, we can really analyze it and see which did better. So that'll definitely be a topic come October that we'll be talking about. Thanks, Eric. Stephanie, last but certainly not least, and I know you have some disease updates for us that you probably want to share.
Yeah, unfortunately. So I guess I'll hit it off. First of all, we didn't get much. We did get a little over 2 inches of rain, and we didn't get much damage, so that's good. I live in the land of tornadoes, so we're usually used to that type of thing where they were up north and not in our area. So we were fortunate in that regard. So I've been getting several calls over the last couple weeks, done one field visit with, I guess, Phytophthora is showing up. And so I think a lot of questions, because I guess when you seed guide, you look at a certain variety and it says it's very good on Phytophthora. And then you go and look and see more specifically what type of RPS genes it has. And so those are resistance against Phytophthora sojae, which is the actual pathogen that causes Phytophthora root rot. And this is not anything new. It's just something that I'm trying to make awareness about. So I think we're seeing definitely some loss of efficacy of the RPS genes. And that's evident. I know I've talked to Karen about it before and others. So take a quicker, better look guide to see what RPS genes you're having if you're seeing Phytophthora out there. And most likely you could be having some issues they're overcoming some RPS genes like 1A, 1C, 1K. And so what we're trying to get, I guess, across is to try to find a variety next year that has RPS 3A, and if possible, also maybe some field tolerance is what we call it, or that another word for it is partial resistance. I know it's available out there. It may not be in your maturity range necessarily. You may have to look at different companies for that, but something to look forward to for 25. The other update is we are starting to get reports, unfortunately, of red crown rot. I think we've set ourselves up well for that disease in the coming weeks. Usually you start scouting for that at R3. And that's about the time some of our beans, and we talked about today, that's the time we use a fungicide. Maybe if you're out, I know Karen, if with the ground rig, that's when I usually get some of these calls. So they start finding problem areas in the field. Actually, we're working with USDA ARS at U of I. And if you want to learn more about that, go to lsoyadvisor.com. But we are working with Steve there where he wants to continue to monitor for red crown rot. So if you find any or have any samples that you want for him to diagnose, you send him an email. He'll send you some free postage so you can mail that sample directly to his lab. So he will be running not just a visual diagnosis. This is going to be a PCR diagnosis. And if it's negative, he will go ahead and they're going to culture it out. So when we say culture, this is not a quick thing. So this might take a while. He's not set up to be a diagnostic lab, but that's what his focus is now. And so he's got some dedicated lab people to do that at this point in time. So those are just 2 updates I have. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, Kelsey, that I missed.
I will add, if someone's not familiar with red crown rot, you can go to Soy Advisor, and in our blog section, there is an article about red crown rot, and there's photos to help you kind of look at it since it's a relatively new disease, and if you're not sure what to be looking for. And it resembles SDS, correct, Stephanie?
Yeah, we can go through all that. I just didn't know if I had enough time.
Yeah, sure. You can do it real quick.
So it's very similar to SDS. So what happens is whenever we get a significant amount of rain, like we just did, diseases like not just SDS, but also other ones like stem canker will send up a toxin to the leaf. And so that's kind of our first indication. Maybe if you drive by a field, you're like, there's SDS showing up again. Well, it may not be SDS. So what we're encouraging people is to look at the base, and with the humidity and moisture that we have had, we're definitely seeing these red pustules start forming on the base. Parathecia is the technical name, and that is a sign of the red crown rot fungus. So that would differentiate it from SDS. And then in regards to stem canker, that shows up a little bit later. Not to say it couldn't show up now, but it would be a canker type of situation, and not a red color with those red kind of little balls on the base.
Thank you. Great explanation. Not a lot of good news here today. Do we have any good news? We had a lot of bad news today. Any good news out there that we should end with, or anything else to add in this up to the group that you want growers to know about?
I think that our April planted corn looks just as good as our May planted corn in our neck of the woods. So I just want to throw that out. I can go look at it tomorrow and just, totally talk about something else next week. But I think we're okay there in that regards. So I think it'll be interesting to see in the fall with the different planting dates what we get.
Definitely.
I was going to say, I think you need to, we should be positive here in Illinois, because if you look at what's going on the East Coast and some other places with drought and other stuff, I mean, we do have, we're so used to conditions of just the or 3 years having these big crops that look beautiful. That this year's just a little tough. I mean, at least our crops are green, and looking good. So it may not be the bumper yield that we're expecting or we hope for, but it's still a good crop, I think.
Drew, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to actually go back to the Phytophthora topic that Stephanie brought up, and I actually forgot to mention that. So we've got a few fields that we're working with that we've double checked to send some samples into U of I on diagnostics, but we're actually going to pull SCN samples, and there's a correlation between heavy cyst level along those lines, just kind of for giggles a little bit to try to start tracking this down. Do you, Steph, think that could have a correlation there, or do you think that doesn't really matter?
Sure, I think there's a whole bunch of correlations. I think there could be a ton of things going wrong. In the specific field that I visited, it was horrible seed quality. And so that's another thing that could cause Phytophthora to be worse. So there are certain seed companies that are known perhaps to have maybe not the best seed quality. And so something to think about next year. Again, I think we were just go this year and trying to get it in the ground. And so when you have get that seed out to the field, sometimes you don't have time maybe to turn it around, but something else to think about next year.
Anyone else before we? I think Karen could lead us out on the piano if you really wanted to in the background. She could do our outro song. All right. Well, thank you all for your updates this week. As always, we'll be back next week and we'll continue to analyze this growing season, which has not been short of things to talk about, that's for sure, and so different from last year. All right. Thanks all. We'll talk to you next week.